In 1881, archaeologists opened a sealed chamber beneath the Temple of Karnak. The room had been sealed for 3,000 years, not with rubble, with limestone blocks, mortared shut, then plastered over, then painted to match the surrounding walls. Someone wanted this room forgotten. Inside, they found something that made them stop the excavation for 6 months. Not treasure, not mummies, not gold. Murals, covering every surface, floor to ceiling, painted in obsessive detail, depicting rituals that no Egyptology textbook mentions, that no museum displays, that most scholars will not discuss on record. The room was designated Chamber K17 in official reports. It has never been opened to the public. This is what those walls show. This was not mythology, this was temple procedure, documented in hieroglyphs, performed by the highest priests in Egypt, defended as divine communion. In the next 20 minutes, I will show you the chambers where it happened, the papyrus scrolls that prescribed it, the tools they used, the one pharaoh who tried to stop it, and what happened to him. This will disturb you. It should. Before we enter those chambers, hit subscribe because some histories are buried for a reason. But burial is not the same as disappearance. Chamber K17 is already open. Gaston Maspero was director of the Egyptian Antiquities Service. By 1881, he had excavated tombs, temples, and pyramids across Egypt. He had seen everything. Then he found Chamber K17. The chamber was located beneath the inner sanctum of the Temple of Karnak, the most sacred space in Egypt's most important temple. The entrance had been hidden behind a false wall covered in religious texts. When workers broke through, Maspero entered first. His journal entry from that day is 3 pages long. 2.5 pages describe the chamber's dimensions, architectural features, and pottery fragments. The final paragraph says only, "The murals require specialist consultation. Work suspended pending review." He brought in 3 specialists, all refused to write official reports. One, Jean Clédat, wrote privately to a colleague, "What I saw in that chamber would end my career if I published it. Not because it is fake, because it is real." The murals depicted rituals involving the god's wife of Amun, the highest religious title a woman could hold in Egypt. More powerful than queen, more sacred than priestess. She was always a virgin. By law, by religious mandate. The mural showed what happened during the Night of Divine Union, a ceremony performed every new moon for over 1,000 years. The god's wife would enter the inner sanctum alone. The doors would be sealed from outside. What happened next was documented in clinical, precise detail across those walls. Not symbolic imagery, not metaphorical art. Instructions, step-by-step procedures, labeled tools, body positions, timing measurements, sex criteria. Maspero photographed the chamber once. The photographs were never published. They remain in a restricted archive in Cairo. Access requires ministerial approval. It has never been granted to journalists. Her name was Karamama. She became God's wife of Amun in 850 BC. She was 9 years old. We know her age because her installation ceremony was recorded on the walls of Karnak Temple. The inscription includes her birth date. The position was not honorary. It was a full-time religious office with specific duties, daily rituals, monthly ceremonies, and the Night of Divine Union, every new moon. Karamama served for 43 years, until her death at age 52. For 43 years, she performed the ceremony. 12 times per year, 516 times total, and for 43 years she remained classified as virgin. By law, by decree, by religious certification renewed annually. How is that possible? The answer is in Papyrus Berlin 33-8, a temple administrative document from the 22nd dynasty. It was translated in 1952, but never fully published. A German Egyptologist named Emma Brunner Traut referenced it in an academic paper that was later retracted under pressure from the Egyptian government. Papyrus describes purification procedures performed after each night of divine union, medical procedures, using specific instruments, designed to restore the sacred seal, surgical procedures, performed by temple physicians, on the god's wife, after every ceremony, to ensure she remained perpetually virgin, not symbolically, physically. The papyrus lists the instruments by name. 3 of them have been found in excavations of temple medical facilities. They are displayed in museums, labelled as ritual implements of uncertain purpose. One is currently in the British Museum. Case 47, Egyptian Gallery. It looks like a small bronze clamp with serrated edges. The label reads, ceremonial tool, possibly for textile work. It was never used for textiles. Karamama endured this 12 times per year, for 4 decades. Her mummy was discovered in 1857. It has never been thoroughly examined. The records say her body was too fragile for modern scanning techniques. The walls of chamber K17 are divided into 12 panels, 1 for each month. Each panel depicts the complete ceremony in sequence. Panel 4 is the most detailed. It shows the inner sanctum of Karnak temple. The god's wife enters through the southern door. She is dressed in white linen. The hieroglyph specifies 5 layers, no jewelry, no sandals. She walks to the center of the room where a stone platform stands. The hieroglyphs call it the place of divine descent. The platform is carved from a single block of black granite. It still exists. It is still inside Karnak temple. Tour guides walk past it daily. They describe it as an offering table. It is not an offering table. It is 7 feet long, 3 feet wide, with carved channels along the edges that drain into collection basins. The murals show what happens next. The god's wife lies on the platform. The high priest enters from the northern door. He is not alone. He brings 4 temple physicians, 2 female attendants, and something the hieroglyphs call the divine instrument. The instrument is depicted in exact detail: length, width, material, decoration. In 2003, archaeologist Dr. Yasmin El-Shazli compared the mural depictions to artifacts in museum collections. She found 7 matches, objects previously classified as ceremonial scepters or ritual wands. They were not scepters. Dr. El-Shazli's paper was rejected by 3 academic journals. She was told the interpretation was speculative and inflammatory. She uploaded it to an independent research database. Within a week, it was removed. Her university email was deactivated. She now works in private consulting and will not discuss the paper publicly, but her measurements remain in the research database archives. The divine instrument was between 14 and 18 inches long, made of polished limestone or basalt, with specific anatomical features carved in detail. The hieroglyphs describe its use in clinical language. Duration. Positioning. Invocations to be recited. The ceremony lasted approximately 2 hours. Then came the restoration. Panel 5 shows that part. The surgical instruments, the physician's positions. The god's wife restrained by the attendants. Not for healing. For ensuring virginity could be certified again the next morning. The night of divine union was not private. The inner sanctum had observation galleries, elevated platforms built into the walls, with clear sight lines to the central platform. These galleries still exist in Karnak temple. They are visible from the ground floor. Tourists photograph them regularly, thinking they are decorative balconies. They were not decorative. Temple records from the 21st dynasty list the required witnesses for the ceremony. Not optional. Required: the high priest, 4 senior priests, 2 royal representatives, the temple physician, the chief scribe to document everything, and the oracle Vamanan, elderly priestess who verified divine approval. 11 witnesses, minimum, watching from those galleries. For 2 hours. Why? Papyrus Chester, Beatty 9th, explains. It was discovered in 1928, but only partially translated due to its sensitive religious content. The full translation was completed in 1975 by a French team. It has never been published commercially, but excerpts exist in restricted academic databases. The papyrus states, "The union must be witnessed by those who speak from Ma'at, for what is unseen by representatives of truth cannot be certified as divine will." Translation: it only counted as sacred if officials watched and documented it. The ceremony was not about the god. It was about verification. Legal verification. That the god's wife submitted to the ritual. That procedures were followed precisely, that her status as sacred virgin was maintained through restoration. The witnesses were not there to honor divinity. They were there to ensure compliance. The scribes' documentation was stored in temple archives. 23 of these records have survived. They are held in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, filed under Administrative Documents Religious Tax Records. They have never been displayed publicly. One record from 715 BC includes the phrase, "The god's wife cried out." This does not invalidate divine acceptance. A girl was chosen for God's wife between ages 6 and 10, always from royal or high noble families, always examined by temple physicians first. The examination was not medical, it was verificatory. Papyrus Lansing describes the selection criteria. The girl must be unbroken, unblemished, untouched by human seed or human hand. How did they verify this in a 6-year-old child? The same way they verified it monthly for the rest of her life. Physical examination. Using instruments. Performed by temple physicians. Documented by scribes. If she passed, she entered training. Not religious education. Preparation. The training took place in a sealed complex attached to Karnak Temple. The complex was excavated in 1969. The excavation report describes it as residential quarters for junior priestesses, but the layout tells a different story. 12 small rooms, no windows, each containing a stone platform identical to the one in the inner sanctum. These were not bedrooms, they were practice chambers. Dr. Aidan Dodson examined the complex in 2001. His report noted unusual wear patterns on the platforms inconsistent with sleeping or storage use. The wear patterns matched the drainage channels on the central platform in the inner sanctum. The girls practiced there. For months or years, practiced lying still, practiced silence, practiced endurance. Temple records describe this as sacred conditioning. One papyrus fragment from the 25th dynasty includes an instructor's note. If she cries during preparation, increase repetition until crying stops. The god requires silence. Karamama trained for 3 years before her first night of divine union. She was 9 when training began, 12 when the ceremony started. We know she survived to 52. We know she performed the ceremony 516 times. We do not know if she ever stopped being afraid. Her mummy's facial reconstruction shows stress fractures in her jaw, the kind caused by prolonged teeth clenching for 4 decades. Some bodies hold memories that words cannot reach. The stones in those practice chambers are still there. Beneath Karnak Temple, in rooms that have been closed for structural repairs since 1973. His name was Akhenaten. History remembers him as the heretic pharaoh who tried to replace Egypt's gods with one sun deity. That is not why the priests hated him. In year 5 of his reign, Akhenaten issued a decree: the god's wife shall no longer enter the place of divine descent. The ceremonies of night union are ended. The position is dissolved. He did not just ban the ceremony, he sent soldiers to Karnak Temple. They removed the black stone platform from the inner sanctum. They sealed chamber K17 with limestone blocks. They dismantled the observation galleries. For 12 years, the night of divine union stopped. Karamama's predecessor, a woman named Shepenwipet I, was released from her position. She was 28. She had served since age 10. Temple records describe her reaction in one line: she did not speak for 7 months after release. Akhenaten moved the capital to a new city, Amarna. 300 miles from Thebes, away from Karnak temple, away from the priests who had performed these ceremonies for 1,000 years. He built new temples with no inner sanctums, no sealed chambers, no platforms. He ruled for 17 years. Within 3 years of his death, everything reversed. His successor, Tutankhamun, was 9 years old. Controlled entirely by the priests of Amun, the same priests Akhenaten had expelled. Their first act, restore the god's wife position. Their second act, reopen chamber K17. Their third act, erase Akhenaten from history. His name was chiseled off every monument. His city was abandoned. His reforms were undone. Within a generation, most Egyptians did not know he had existed. But the priests remembered. Temple records from Tutankhamun's reign include this notation: let no pharaoh forget, the gods speak through their servants, not through kings. Translation: kings can be replaced. The ceremonies resumed. The platform was reinstalled. A new god's wife was chosen. Her name was Ta. She was 8 years old. She served for 36 years. Most temple archives burned during the Persian invasion of 525 BC, deliberately. The Persians knew what those documents contained. But some survived, not in temples, in tombs. Wealthy Egyptians were often buried with administrative documents, proof of temple donations, tax receipts, property deeds, normal bureaucratic material. In 1924, archaeologist Howard Carter excavated the tomb of a minor official named Amenemhat, a mid-level administrator, not important enough to be remembered. Among his burial goods, 47 papyrus documents, tax records, grain receipts, estate transfers, and one document that did not fit. It was labeled Testimony of Karamama, God's wife of Amun, given in year 41 of her service. It was not a religious text, it was a legal deposition. Karamama had sued the temple physicians for malpractice. The document described her injuries in clinical detail: scarring, chronic pain, internal damage that made walking difficult. She demanded that the restoration procedures be modified or ended. The case was heard by a temple court. 3 senior priests presided. Their ruling is recorded at the bottom of the document. The god's wife does not possess authority of a temple procedure. The rituals are divine law. Her suffering is sacred service. Claim dismissed. Karamama was 50 years old when she filed that lawsuit. She continued serving for 2 more years. She died at 52. Cause of death is not recorded. Carter photographed the document. The photograph was published once, in a 1926 archaeological bulletin. The caption identified it as legal text of uncertain subject matter. The original papyrus is now in the Egyptian Museum. Storage Vault 17. It is not catalogued in the public database. Dr. Zahi Hawass, former Egyptian Minister of Antiquities, was asked about it in a 2008 interview. His response: some documents serve no educational purpose. In 391 AD, Roman Emperor Theodosius banned pagan worship throughout the empire. Egypt's temples were closed. Priests were scattered. The night of divine union ended. Finally, after more than 1,500 years, but not because Christians found it horrifying, because there was no longer a god's wife position to fill. Early Christian writers in Egypt mentioned the ceremonies exactly twice. Clement of Alexandria, writing around 200 AD, described them as the mysteries of the Egyptians, which it is not lawful to reveal. He did not condemn them, he classified them as secret knowledge. St. Paro, Cyril of Alexandria, writing in 420 AD, referred to the sacred practices of the god's wife as evidence of pagan corruption. But he never detailed what those practices were. Why the silence? Because similar practices had already entered Christian tradition. The concept of perpetual virginity, the idea that a woman could remain virgin despite physical acts, the verification of purity through examination by religious authorities. These did not start with Christianity. Christianity inherited the framework. By the medieval period, European convents practiced virginity testing for incoming nuns. Physical examinations, performed by male church physicians, documented by church scribes. The practice continued in some regions until the 16th century, when Martin Luther condemned it during the Reformation. He did not call it a Christian invention. He called it the Egyptian abomination, preserved in Rome. He was historically accurate. The instruments used in some convents were remarkably similar to those found in Egyptian temple excavations. Not identical, but functionally equivalent. The theology changed. The procedures did not. Karnak Temple hosts thousands daily. Guides point at hieroglyphs. Explain gods. Explain columns. They walk past chamber K17. Unmarked, unmentioned, sealed. Most guides do not know it exists. In 2019, a British documentary crew requested access. Denied. No reason. The black stone platform remains inside. Tourists lean on it for photos. One blogger called it a cool place to rest. The observation galleries remain open, used for panoramic shots. No one explains why they exist. The Egyptian Museum holds over 100,000 artifacts. Nearly half are unseen. That includes surgical instruments, temple records, testimonies, stored, locked, restricted. A BBC journalist was denied access in 2015. Reason: undergoing conservation. They have been undergoing conservation since 1952. Some preservation is concealment. In 2017, Human Rights Watch documented forced virginity testing in 20 countries. Not ancient, current, Egypt, Indonesia, Afghanistan, India, ordered by police, performed by doctors, used as legal proof. Between 2011 and 2016, Egypt recorded dozens of cases. The procedure is unchanged. Physical examination. Medical instruments. Moral justification. One survivor said, "They told me it was for my protection, that it would prove my innocence." She was 19. Her words could belong to Karamama, 3,000 years apart. Identical experience. In 2021, Egypt banned the practice, not from outrage, from exposure. It continues. Quieter. The gods changed. The empires fell. The gods changed. The empires fell. The control remained. Some scholars argue symbolism, not action, that the rituals were metaphor. The instruments misunderstood. A valid debate. But symbolism does not require sealed chambers. It does not require restricted archives. It does not require modern denial. Karamama served 43 years. Her lawsuit was real. Some debates exist because the truth is uncomfortable, not because the evidence is unclear. Chamber K17 is still sealed. No photographs, no scans, no access. In 2022, a request was filed to release photographs of Karamama's testimony. Denied. Reason: not in the public interest. Whose interest does silence serve? Not the women of the past, not the women of the present. If we cannot acknowledge what happened 3,000 years ago, how will we confront what still happens now? If this stayed with you, subscribe. The archives remember what monuments erase. Some of us refuse to look away.